Never thought that I'd get involved into the world of fashion in any capacity whatsoever, but the doggedy dogs, as they say. During the project, it developed so rapidly, we ended up going into production and making 680 custom hand-built jackets. You've got to really consider the human being. And the human being's all different, which is a nightmare, because when you design a product, so I was thinking, I remember in the 80s watching the fashion show, not the fashion show, the clothes show. Never thought that I'd get involved into the world of fashion in any capacity whatsoever, but there is an amazing similarity between fashion actually and inflatables. And I often say to people that designing inflatables is actually like a cross between pattern making and geometry. We have to create patterns to make the inflatables, and as we go on to make bigger outdoor structures, they're very complex patterns to get the form that we want. So we've become like specialists in very large scale pattern development. The thing with an inflatable garment is you need to make it kind of 30% bigger than you need, because when you inflate it, it contracts on you. You've got to really consider the human being. And the human being's all different, which is a nightmare, because when you design a product, you standardize the product and the humans work around it. When you do a clothing product, the humans are all different and the product is fixed, but that relationship is then different for everybody. So in a strange way, the flexibility in the inflatable has a potential benefit to the fact that we're all different shapes and sizes. One of the first successful projects we worked on in the world of fashion was an inflatable slider with a company called Slide. With your feet, you have size. With my days working at Red or Dead, I didn't get to know a lot about sizes, but you have like a size 35, 36 for women, all the way up to 41, 42. And for men, kind of from 37 up to now 46, and God knows what. People's feet have got bigger and bigger. We realized very early on that there was an opportunity to do small, medium, and large. And every size increment between there could be made up by how hard you inflated the slider or not. And if you were a size 43, which is an average man's size, you just inflated it like, you know, a fair amount, but not too much, probably 30% inflated. But if your foot was a bit small, you just inflate it a bit more. And if your foot was a bit bigger, you just inflate it a bit less. It gripped and worked quite well. But this is where I spotted kind of something about fashion that I've always struggled with, is that nature that it's fashionable for a season and then it's gone. And I kind of thought that we'd done this work and this development into this slider, and we did one season and then that was the end of it. So watch this space, because there are intentions for us to bring back the slider, because I always felt there was untapped potential in that product. As a designer, even if I'm not designing my own product and we're supporting someone else, I'm trying to think about it from their creative head point, so that we're trying to make and resolve the design to establish their creative journey. We worked with Craig Green, developing some products for him a couple of seasons ago. He came to the studio and we worked for a day, and he didn't have much time, but we went through as much as we could. It was like a speed dating, teach him inflatables. And I know he'd already worked with a lot of processes, as very talented in his understanding, but I was very impressed that he came in and wanted to see how it worked. We developed with him a number of products for one of his catwalk shows. What was interesting is, in all the conversations we had and everything we made and all the samples and all the dialogue and everything we were trying to do, and as I understood it, when I saw the catwalk show, I was like, whoa, this is completely different to what we discussed. Not in as much as I didn't like it. It was like his vision for what he wanted and what we were discussing created in my head a completely different vision of what I thought he was trying to do. The show was stunning. What he did was amazing. The way he basically hacked our products that we made for him. So we were creating products, and then he hacked it and created his show. And I really liked that, because it was completely different to what I expected, which was what I think really great fashion is about, is that he saw potential in the techniques we had, but he saw how he wanted to bring them to life. But the project I wanted to talk about here is a project we did with Louis Vuitton and the late Virgil Abloh, where we developed for them, it's their design, so it's not our design. We were there really to execute take the intelligence of what they were doing into a product. And they came to us to do a couple of jackets, a gilet and a puffer jacket, inflatable, which is cool. And we started the process just looking at one-off catwalk show pieces, which was understandable. During the project, it developed so rapidly. We ended up going into production and making 680 units of these custom hand-built jackets, inflatable for them, which was a really big challenge because we effectively produced 680 hand-built prototypes. There was no time to mass produce it. So everything we did was handcrafted in Antwerp, and we had to go through a very intense process of developing the patterns with them, which took months. And during that time, the show was growing. What they did, which was really great, the patterns they sent us were stunning. We explained to them how inflatables work, the constraints of how they contract and everything else. But whoever on their side, the people developing the patterns, developed and shared with us really, really great patterns very quickly. And we were able to work very fluidly in terms of getting to where they wanted to be with the form. So we had to develop the pattern into handmade prototype tooling, so we could make prototypes very accurately to the final product. But we had to have an eye on, how we were going to go into some sort of tooling to part mass produce some elements, which was still very, very hand production. Ever since I started Inflate, one of my missions was to raise the perceived value of inflatables. We wanted to avoid that line where you fall on the tacky side. How do you keep the inflatable with dignity? And working with LV, all of the features and fittings and all of the details of the clasps and how everything was done, because there was some stitching that had to be incorporated, everything was super, super, super precise, every single detail. And so as we worked from kind of a very broad form and the pattern cutting for the gilet and the puffer jacket, we had to slowly start to become more refined and more detailed as the process went along. Because it was going to become something that sold, we then had to industrialize this process as best we could to create an output for the jacket. And that was quite a stunning journey. Now, as we get there, I've got lucky enough to have a couple of the jackets here. So I'm going to just take this one, which was the gilet. Which is, I might talk with my back to the camera for a bit, but basically you can see we've got this nice puffy jacket. We were able to do them in limited sizes, the same as the flip-flops, because you inflate it or deflate it according to how big you are. One of the things we realized was why so many people were buying them. These were selling to footballers and Instagrammers were buying these and making all sorts of posts with them. But I love this one. It was this has the Louis Vuitton monogram on the inside. We got the zip. We got the clear puffer, so you can see the monogram through it. I feel like a model wearing it, but it's kind of funky little thing. And this is quite wearable in a weird way. I sound like a salesman. It's kind of wearable, but actually, the one that I think is really, really cool is this one, which is the puffer. This is mental. This jacket these are all hand done. This is a mental jacket that you cannot, I'm going to try and put it on. Look at this. This is like absolutely the doggedy dogs, as they say. And it was amazing working on this and getting every single bit of this tailored, and all of the monogram. This has got a full embossed monogram on it, We had to literally emboss all of this monogram and get everything done so that we could then sew and put it all together. God, it's bloody hot. And yeah, it was cool jacket. And I think for me, these jackets were like, in a way, of all of the fashion things we've done, these really did push what we could do with inflatables to the limit, not because of making it, but because of the demands on one side of a brand like LV, working with a process like an inflatable and trying to keep that premium high-end, those premium high-end values all the way through into an inflatable garment. You know, like you could go, I haven't Googled it, but I'm sure if you Googled inflatable puffer jacket, you'll find them made in China. I'm sure someone makes them. Nothing against Chinese production, but there would be these kind of commodity items, or a life jacket. People take a sports life jacket as a commodity, but these had to be crafted and like all hand done as like the kind of, for me, this is like the kind of the limit that you can push the perceived value of an inflatable to. I don't know, without going into something really technical with inflatables, I don't think that the value perception of them could be any higher. And then actually developing this as a product to sell and market through boutiques globally was quite something. So this has been the Louis V journey. It was a really fantastic experience. And as I said with the inflatable fruit bowl, having done this now and seen an end-to-end process, I really know how we can do this with other products. We learned an incredible amount in how to do it.